Yokozuna. Him and his he's kind of quite the ladies' man even at his size, right? At least he tried. Yeah, he tried to be at least.
He was a great guy. He's probably one of the best people that I've ever met in this business. And I was actually one of the guys that found him. And so I had to call the family and everything to tell him, to tell them what had happened with him and stuff. And I was the one that helped him get the body back.
Oof. Oh, geez.
Day and stuff home. So we were real close. We had, been together. We'd just come off of a tour of the Middle East together, and he called me and stuff, wanted me to go do this tour to England. And of course, he died on that tour on October 23rd.
Yeah. Wow. That's crazy. That's insane. I could seriously sit here all night listening to old wrestling stories. This is my fanboy dream come true. Like, this is back when wrestling was amazing. But I have to ask you other questions too.
Sure, go ahead.
As much as I want to listen to those. A couple other questions for you before we move on to what you're doing now. State of the business. I mean, we talked about you wrestling when wrestling was wrestling and fans would stab people and all that. How do you feel now with the state of the business being more sports entertainment and these guys are kind of no-selling and craziest matches you've ever seen in your life, nowadays?
I don't really watch it. To tell you the truth, I really do not watch it anymore. I don't like the state of the business. That's one reason why I quit watching it.
Yeah.
But I enjoyed wrestling a lot more before it got exposed.
Right. I think
when we
did.
When we were still trying to make people believe it was real, it was a lot more fun for me. And we weren't walking in and getting handed a script saying, "Here's your match for the night."
Right.
We knew what our finish was supposed to be, and we knew how things were supposed to start, and that was pretty well it.
Yeah, and then you worked
everything else. Bye.
Yeah, and you worked in Japan where it was a tough guy style there, where it was pretty brutal. A lot of brutal matches in Japan.
I was fortunate, I guess, because I got to work American style. I got to work the Lucha Libre because I spent a lot of time down in Mexico. Then I worked I think they call it Purescu or the Japanese style. And then I also got to work catch doing the German style throughout my career. So, I really got a taste of everything, I guess, from, start to finish.
So,
and it was really a lot different stuff. But yeah, Japan was much more solid. And my first tour of Japan, it was, I was over there with Steve Dr. Death Williams, Terry Gordy, Stan Hansen,
tough guys in the sport.
Kawada, and,
legit wrestlers.
Oh, and I remember seeing some of the matches with Stan and Kawada. And all I could think is, God, I'm thankful I'm not out there.
Were you over there when Vader was over there? Because I know he had some brutal matches too.
When who?
Big Van Vader.
I never got to work a tour with Vader. Now, I did see the match and stuff of Vader and Stan.
Mm-hmm.
And that was...
Where his eye came out?
Where his eye came out, yeah. Stan was tough. There was no doubt about it. That had to be one of the toughest guys in wrestling.
Oh, yeah, Stan Hansen.
And, solid to work with. But, he was always real nice to me. I don't know if it's just because we're both Texans and kind of came up through the same people. But, I learned on that lariat after the first time that I always got up on my toe right before he threw it because he always had a tendency to throw it high.
Ooh. And even a 7-footer had to get on his tippy toes.
Yeah, being 7 foot, he would try to throw extra high and stuff with me. So I would always make sure I got up on my toe just at the last second because, Stan couldn't see 3 inches past the end of his nose. Stan was blind as a bat. So I always made sure I got up on my toe and stuff. He's going to throw that lariat at me.
That's hilarious.
But yeah, Japan was a great thing for me. That was really kind of when I started coming into my own the first time, which would have been 90. I was working with so much great talent. It was an on-the-job training tour, if nothing else.
Yeah, I mean that's the best way to come up. It seems like is on the job training, not the pampered training that they get nowadays.
Yeah, I mean a lot of those guys now and stuff, they have no idea, what it was like having to travel, hours upon hours to get to shows and then turn around to drive back at night.
Yeah,
I worked the Memphis territory for a little bit, and that was just brutal travel, working Memphis.
and not very much money either.
Oh no, not at all. You're having a $400-$500 week and stuff, and you're thinking you're having a great week, and you're putting that much stuff, back in the car and stuff to get from point A to point B every night.
Jeez, that just covers the beer cost driving down the road.
Yeah, I mean, you're having to travel 4 guys in a car and stuff, and I mean, I got to travel with great guys in Memphis. I was traveling with Undertaker. I was traveling with
Nice.
Dirty White Boy and Black Bart. And, so I mean, that was another learning experience riding with some of those guys.
Oh, I imagine. I mean, those guys are legends.
Well, which is funny because I didn't even recognize Undertaker when I came in, and Mark and I had actually played basketball against each other in college.
Oh, really?
And we didn't even recognize each other, and he offered to let me stay at his place, and just we said, willing to sleep on the couch and stuff. You can stay with me if you want to. So I stayed with him, and he came out with a Texas Western sweatsuit on one day. And I'm like, wait a minute, you went to Texas Wesleyan, and then we put it together, and it was just like, God, how we not recognize each other? So I actually knew him before either one of us got into wrestling.
So you don't really watch wrestling today. Do you watch any of the smaller guys?
No, I don't. It's... And, I hate to say it, but I mean, there's a lot of guys that are involved in wrestling today and stuff that should be on the other side of the ropes.
Yeah.
Very true.
When I got in, they would have never even been, they've been laughed out of a building if they came up and asked about, becoming a wrestler. But I mean, and I think that was one of the things that made wrestling back in the 80s and everything else and stuff is you had guys that were larger than life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's, when you would see a guy and stuff, it was an impressive thing to see. And now when you see guys and stuff that, sometimes look like that aren't much bigger than your kids, it's hard to have that awe factor and stuff with them now.
And it seemed like back then, half the job was being a tough guy out of the ring as much as being in the ring.
Yeah.
Somebody said something about the business, you had to go and punch him in the face.
Well, sure. You protected the business at no cost. And I think that was one reason why I had such a long international career is I still remember after things got exposed in the States, I was working South Africa a lot at that time. And I actually moved down there for a little over 5 years. And I still remember going places and they were saying, oh, our wrestling here is real, not like the stuff in the States. And I mean, it was the same thing, but their perception was everything that they saw with WWE or WWF at the time, that was the fake wrestling that everybody had heard about on the internet.
Right.
It wasn't the real wrestling like they were having in their country.
No, that was the Goon and all the other horrible wrestlers.
Goon, Repo Man,
yeah. So I got to ask you, do you have? I mean, you came up with all these amazing guys. Do you have a favorite opponent or series of matches with a guy that you had?
I always had fun with Abdullah.
That guy's insane.
Because he would juice and make you look like a beast.
Yeah, Abby was always entertaining to wrestle with. You just never knew what he was going to do from one night to the next.
Didn't know if he was going to bring out a fork or some other type of instrument.
Well, I saw the fork every time.
Yeah, that's true.
Other stuff that you didn't know how he saw sometimes. We worked in one of those big baseball stadiums in Puerto Rico, and he's, they're telling me, he said, go get him as he comes out of the dugout. So, I mean, we're going and stuff, and he's like, get that stick. I'm like, what stick? That one. And he's guiding me over to this thing, and it's like, how in the hell did he even see this thing? But he did. He had such vision for
weapons,
objects to use in a match and stuff. Yeah, for weapons that you couldn't. It was amazing and stuff what he would come up with sometimes. But I never felt unsafe working with him, even with the crazy stuff. I mean, my God, stuff. He threw TV cameras at me and everything else, but I never felt unsafe working with him.
And I heard that guy was super nice behind the scenes.
Oh, Webby was one of the nicest guys you could possibly meet. He was a real gentleman. Always, was always well dressed, and we went to dinner a few times and stuff, in Japan. And he's always just very much of a gentleman and stuff everywhere we went.
So weird, so different from what you see on TV and the old matches and stuff.
Yeah, but I mean, he was always one of my favorite people to find out I was booked against.
Yeah.
A lot with Connect in Mexico and stuff. Connect and I had a great connection and stuff in our matches as well.
I have to look him. I don't know who that is.
Yeah, Connect was for Minus. He was the one that ran the big Cuatro Caminos.
Okay.
There in Mexico City. And Connect was their world champion and stuff for years. And he always got the big American guys. That was what Connect was pretty well built at. He worked as a heel against most of the Mexican wrestlers, but it was always a baby face and stuff with the American heels that came in.
Hometown hero kind of thing.
Yeah. So, I mean, we always had some great matches and stuff. And he had some good matches with Rodney and stuff too. So.
Yeah. Where would you say the best fans are? I know you sold out some crazy huge arenas before.
Oh, wow. That's hard to say. I mean, Barbarian and I were main event for our card in Bombay, India. So it's Mumbai now, but at the time it was Bombay. And we had over 75,000 people, and that was what they counted because they broke down part of a wall and people were coming in through those holes in the wall. So they didn't really know what the actual count ended up being.
That's crazy.
They counted 75. It could have been closer to 80. I don't know for sure.
Jeez, that's WrestleMania numbers right there. That's crazy.
Big Indira Gandhi Cricket Stadium. I mean, that thing was full.
Yeah, that thing's big. Yeah.
We had maybe 3 feet from the ring because we hit the crowd. So they were right on top of us. But that was always good. South Africa, that was my second home. I loved wrestling in South Africa. And, we had some big crowds there. We sold out their Sun City Arena, which was a 10,000 seat arena, which, doesn't sound that big here. But over there, it was one of the biggest crowds they'd ever had for wrestling.
Jeez.
Mexico City and Torreo and stuff, Connect and I did 26,000.
That's pretty big.
So I got to wrestle. Yeah, I got to wrestle, in front of some very big crowds and stuff throughout my career. But South Africa was probably my favorite place to work overseas.
Yeah.
But Mexico and stuff had some of the biggest crowds.
And now, as of a couple weeks ago, you're in the Southern Championship Hall of Fame.
Yeah, that was a great honor when they contacted me and asked me if I wanted to go in. I mean, there's Stan Hansen's in it, Terry Gordy, Bruiser Brody, the Von Erichs, Steve Dr. Death Williams. So there's some big names. I think Jim Cornette's in it.
Of course. All the Texas guys, all the Southern guys coming up.
Yeah, it's most of those guys, and they expanded it this year for the first time to Southern Pro Wrestling. I think originally it was the Texas Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame.
Oh, okay.
It was mostly Texas wrestlers, and now it's expanded stuff to include Southern wrestlers,
which is most of the amazing wrestlers from that time. So that's
right, with all the world class and the Mid-South and the Houston and San Antonio promotions.
Yeah, that's a lot of people to draw from.
Right.
So
I thought it was a great honor, because I didn't really wrestle in Texas that much. I did some. I worked some of the independents. I worked for Global when they were in Dallas after the Von Erichs, and worked for Shawn Michaels in his territory that he had in San Antonio, and then
nice.
PCW, that was one of the big local Dallas promotions in like 2006 or 7.
So when did you retire?
I had my last match about 3 years ago. So
okay.
2012.
Was that hard coming out of the business?
It was, but